Welcome to the Muscle Expert Podcast with Ben Pakulski, one of the world's top professional bodybuilders, an expert on human performance and mindset mastery. Ben dives deep to deliver the strategies of the top experts to upgrade your body, mind, muscle, strength, performance, biochemistry, and how to become the upgraded modern man. Join us on benpakulski.com to learn the cutting-edge techniques to take control of your body, your brain, and create your greatest life.
What's up, ladies and gents? Muscle Expert Podcast. Another amazing guest, as always. Not going to disappoint with this one. So with this one's a little bit of a unique format. We actually just started having an organic conversation, started recording it, and then it ended up turning into a podcast. So you're going to be joining this one kind of mid-conversation. And this is with a great friend of mine, Alex Viada. And Alex is a superstar athlete in the endurance space who's come from the powerlifting space and now is making the transition into the bodybuilding space. He's extremely well-educated, extremely well-researched. He's got a team built around complete human performance. So no matter what endeavor you're coming from, what endeavor you want to go into, he is a coach that can help you get there in the most effective and most intelligent way possible. We talk about a lot of really cool stuff from the parallels of endurance training and powerlifting and bodybuilding. Believe it or not, there's tremendous parallels. At least at the elite levels. We discuss many things that the elite coaches are doing that you should be paying attention to maximize your training, whether it be for endurance, hypertrophy, or strongman. So enjoy this episode. You're going to want to listen right to the end because I ask Alice some very personal questions about his endeavors, his hardest feats, and how he overcomes them. So enjoy and have a great day. Nobody's really thinking like that, right? So everybody, when they're thinking about bodybuilding, like, well, how much weight am I lifting? How much cardio am I doing? What amount of time am I working out? All these external variables. And I'm like, well, why does any of that matter? Like, the only thing that really matters is I'm trying to create this internal response to an external stimulus. So if I can create this internal response, whether it be a hypertrophy response, whether it be a fat loss response, whether it be an endurance adaptation, an aerobic adaptation, with the minimal effective stimulus, why wouldn't I? So, instead of attaching myself to, I need to lift more weight, or I need to do more reps, or no, I don't need to do any of that. Truthfully, I don't need to do any of that. I just need to tell my body somehow, give it the signal to create this internal response. Mm-hmm. And you're saying very, very similar things are happening in endurance.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, I think in endurance, there are kind of two schools of thought, a little bit like you said with bodybuilding. There's the school of thought that's very much external data driven. Here are your paces, here are the target heart rates, here's your target wattage, your target output on the bike, and let's create workouts that are absolutely about hitting this target wattage for this amount of time, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's a second movement, which I think is a lot more common in a lot of ultra distance sports, where the focus is very much, and interestingly enough, we were talking about how it's efficiency versus inefficiency, but the focus is very much on what is the objective of this workout? What is the adaptive response that we're going for here? The objective of this workout isn't necessarily X number of miles. It's not necessarily let's hit this pace for this number of minutes or anything else. You're saying the objective of this workout, the objective of this run or this ride, we're going to work on a specific level of output, level of internal output over the next hour. Or we're going on this 2-hour run. What we're going to focus on is efficiency for the first hour, and then on the second hour we're going to focus on actually bringing that pace down, and we're going to take the intensity down, and we're going to try to finish this run out strong.
So talking about efficiency, man, what does that look like? If we're trying to be efficient for the first hour of a run, what does that look like for an endurance athlete?
For a lot of efficiency in run is efficiency in posture, efficiency in leg movement. Interesting what you talked about. There's efficient runners. There was so much technique to it.
Sure.
There was so much technique to upper body positioning.
Trying to get the body to do as little as possible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Keeping that weight over the pelvis. Don't allow it to lean forward. Don't allow it to lean back. Don't tense too much. Don't relax too much. Don't get sloppy. Eliminating crossover. There are a lot of things with running efficiency, stride length, stride turnover. A lot of these things that they break down over time. Really good runners, really good endurance athletes focus on maintaining that form as they fatigue.
Right.
A lot of endurance training, certainly for a lot of the ultra distance type work, is very much about maintaining that proper body positioning, proper muscle engagement. Not allowing
really interesting.
Yeah, it's very funny because you look at a lot of these really good endurance athletes and they have spent so long perfecting good form. Because you think about any sport where you perform 10 repetitions, 15 repetitions. If form breaks down by the end of it, that's bad. Think about how many repetitions are in a run.
Yes.
That is thousands and thousands and thousands of repetitions of a movement, and you have to get it right. And a lot of the focus in endurance sport now is as we do more with gait analysis and motion capture and posture and an analysis of movement, we're starting to really see that efficiency can be taught and it can be trained, and you can really increase the durability of these runners. And in fact, strength training is becoming a much bigger part of that.
That's what I was going to say, man. I'm smiling here because I see such a parallel between not bodybuilding. I mean, obviously bodybuilding, but strength training. So like, there's so many strength athletes who are just of the mentality, I'm trying to hit these numbers, but there's such a component of skill acquisition, man. Like, I would argue that most people, if not all, would massively see increases in their strength output and their ability to perform lifts, and they're ultimately their end result. They're getting stronger without ever lifting heavy, just by improving the skill. And it's such a funny parallel that I've never been in the endurance world, so I don't really understand. Like, and that just makes perfect sense. It's almost the idea of like never training past the breakdown of that skill, right? Yep. And so, how much are endurance athletes paying attention to that, and how much is it just like, well, it's time to man up, I need to do more work?
Yeah. Well, and again, you kind of go back to two schools of thought. And of course, there's always a time and place to say, okay, you're fatigued. Well, you got another 2 hours. You got a 100-mile race coming up in 3 months. You're going to go out and a lot of your work is going to hurt.
Just be conscious and not breaking.
Be conscious and not breaking. But, a little bit like we discussed about my training on the bodybuilding side, you have to earn the right to crush yourself.
There you go.
And we keep coming back to that. There are a couple of really good coaches I speak to who basically say, like, if the whole thing now is everyone wants to do a marathon. Well, okay, not everybody, but within a certain group of people, everyone says, okay, well, I've done a 10K. I'm going to do a half marathon, then I'm going to do a marathon. But a lot of these coaches are pointing out, look, by the time you finished your 10K, your form was all over the place. You weren't able to generate speed, power, anything else. Why are you going to quadruple that distance when you haven't earned the right to do a fast 10K? You look terrible doing this. Why are you already setting your sights on this huge objective over here? Let's improve your ability to sustain
qualitative goal rather than a quantitative goal.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
And that's so much it. It's saying, like, look, we have to work on your form. We have to work on your repeatability. We have to work on your ability to understand when your form is breaking down.
Yeah.
Because at that point, you really are just gutting out the rest of the run.
Dude, so for those of you listening, Alex came into the gym this week and we did a few bodybuilding-oriented workouts because he's going to be doing a bodybuilding show. And this is literally the same shit we're talking about. We're like, all right, man, you're going to have to earn your right. Like, for the last 3 months before a contest, we want to be able to pull the pin and just hammer.
Yeah.
But doing that and doing things incorrectly, it's just useless.
Yeah.
It's not only going to cause damage, it's going to drive up inflammation, probably make your ability to get in shape a lot more difficult.
Yep.
And this is literally what we're trying to teach, with the muscle intelligence lifestyle, is like, stop doing the wrong things hard. That doesn't make sense. And people just, you don't use their brain. They're so attached to, man, this is something you and I talked about in the first workout, is like, they're so attached to, I need to work hard. I don't care how bad I feel today. I don't care how tired I am. I just need to crush it today. Yeah. And I know from a muscle building and body transformation perspective, that's just the opposite of what needs to happen, because all I'm concerned about as a physique athlete is trying to create the right internal environment to support my body to build muscle and lose fat. That's it. What happens on the outside doesn't fucking matter. It's a great ego boost. If I can lift more weight, awesome. I feel good about myself. I get a positive dopamine hit. I feel awesome. But the reality is, all that matters is what's happening inside my body. So losing that attachment to, I need to crush this work, I need to work hard, that's obviously a point. But first, as we spoke about, you have to earn your right to work hard.
It's funny because you're saying this, and I'm thinking, like, if you're an endurance athlete, going back to that, you've got a 16-mile run on deck, and you think, if you're not ready to do that 60-mile, but you finish it, you look terrible and you feel terrible for the last 6 miles, but you finish it,
right,
and you are crushed the next day. Your knees are hurting, your shin splints are acting up, your arches are hurting. Everything is trash, but you finish that 16 miles. Would 13 miles have been better if you actually maintained your form,
right,
and you actually got the desired learning effect? Because the training effect from endurance work is, of course, all the physiological, biological adaptations and everything else. But part of the biggest difference with doing any sort of long distance event is the ability to resist form breakdown and the ability to maintain efficiency over a long period of time. If you're just throwing on more and more mileage and just crushing yourself even more without learning what's breaking down, without earning the right to go longer distances, then you're going to get that same effect. You finish the workout.
You're building bad habits. You're causing more injuries.
Yep.
And psychologically, you got to wonder which is the way to go. Like, I don't even know the answer. But so psychologically, you finished. So you're like, all right, I feel good about this. I feel awesome. But then you're reinforcing all these bad habits of like, I just did all these things so shitty, but I just manned up and went through it.
Yeah.
Like, from my perspective, I'd be like, man, stop. Like, don't keep going. Like, and I do that all the time in the gym. If someone's training, I'm like, hey, man, that's enough of that. Because when you're learning a skill, the worst thing you can do is allow it to break. And this is what we teach guys here in the MI40 gym is we go through a primer phase. So a primer phase is just basically laying the foundation, effectively what you're going through right now, laying the foundation to have the right in the future to be able to smash it.
Yeah.
But everyone comes in the gym, they go, man, I want to work hard.
Yeah.
You haven't earned the right to work hard.
Exactly.
Right? And the reality is, like you saw today, if we do things right, it's still very, very challenging.
It's very tough.
Yeah, it's very specific. And it doesn't have to be heavy. It doesn't have to be go for gusto. You may not even break a massive sweat. Yeah. Well, you probably will. But it's more really, really precise focus, precise execution rather than just like how much can I lift for how many reps. And you saw that when we train hamstrings, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like Alex is very, 600-pound deadlift easily. I've seen you do it. We did it together. But then if we shift the focus a little bit, okay, we're going to use a little more hamstring, a little less glute, a little less lower back. Oh, shit, now all of a sudden, this feels really freaking heavy to do half that work.
Yeah, I don't even lift, apparently.
Yeah. But it's such a cool thing, right? And this is literally, man, I love this conversation because this is what we're trying to teach. So speaking about endurance, tell me about how people should approach progressing the skill acquisition, because I'm guaranteeing there's going to be a parallel that we can draw here with muscle building. So, someone's relatively new. Let's walk through my next 6 months, right? So assume I've never been on a bike, which is true. I've never run anything. I used to run, but that was a different lifetime. What should my progression look like? And should it be more internal focused where like I kind of self-regulate?
Yeah.
Like when do I break? Or should there be external objectives or a combination of the two?
Well, and that's the thing is, especially when somebody is new to a sport but not new to sport, they are used to being able to just man up.
Yeah.
And, talk about getting you on a bike for a minute. You obviously have a lot of leg power. You certainly have the ability to kind of, grit your teeth and get through whatever the heck you want. But anytime you're new to a bike, the most important things are going to be first of all, learn the mechanical basics, learn how to get comfortable on a bike, but then learn little cues.
I think the better way to say that was learn how to not be uncomfortable. Because you're not going to be comfortable.
You're never going to be comfortable on a bike, not with a seat like that. But a lot of the little things like how to properly engage the hamstrings, how to do all around pedal stroke, because a lot of people just mash the pedals. That's a really good way to get your patellar tendon to light up and
especially if you don't fit the bike perfectly. Which clearly I'll never fit a bike.
Yeah, and that's just it. Little considerations, especially with larger athletes, where the size of your adductor is not going to let you get perfect straight knee movement.
Exactly.
You're going to have to be fighting that constantly and working on that.
There's always going to be a hip thing. Yeah,
always going to be trying to internally rotate those hips a little bit, and we're going to work on pedal strokes. How to just doing the pedal stroke on the bottom part of the movement, just learning to pull with the hamstring rather than just push with the quad, learning to pull up with that with the hip flexors on the top part of the movement. Learning to do that pedal stroke is going to be a major objective for the first month or so, because otherwise every ride that you go out on is just it's going to be instinctively just that push down on the pedals, and what's going to happen is that's going to be fine for a 10-mile ride or a 12-mile ride or a 15-mile ride. When you get to a 30-mile ride, a 40-mile ride, your knees are going to line up.
Manning up just doesn't work anymore.
It doesn't work anymore.
Your body explodes.
And that's just it. The body breaks down. So we'll be working on that, going to work on upper body positioning, single arm drills, a lot of keeping your pelvis stable. So a lot of that first work is going to be just that fundamental work, because we can put the mileage in later.
Right. And I say that about people coming into the gym, right? For the first couple of years of training, your ability to contract muscle is basically nil anyways. So you're not going to hurt yourself. Like your form can be shit. Yeah. You're going to get a little bit of hypertrophy, and you're probably not going to hurt yourself because you can't contract muscles really intensely anyways. Yeah. The better you get, the bigger you get, the more your form has to be absolutely on point, because your predisposition to injury is much greater. You're going to cause more systemic stress. You're going to cause more systemic inflammation. People don't think like that, man. This is what we're trying to empower you guys with. Yeah. It's like, man, if you don't do this shit, you're going to break.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, similar in I know when I get on a bike, like I probably have to be more conscious of anybody than anybody, because the power output is there.
Yeah.
I know I can just breathe through any amount or most amounts of discomfort.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's probably the worst case scenario, right?
You've spent 20 years developing the ability to absolutely destroy your body in a shorter period of time.
Yeah, and I just smile through the whole way. Like when something sucks for me, that's always my default. I'll throw on a big smile, but holy shit, this sucks. But I'm going to man up and do it anyways.
But man, I went through that same process. I got on a bike and my legs were massively strong, and I was like, man, I can crush anybody on this thing. This is great. And nothing improved. I improved for a little while, and I just hit this wall.
Similar, right?
My knees were hurting, and my hips were hurting, and I was not improving. And every time I would go out, there would be muscle soreness in the same places, and I just didn't improve.
Wow.
It took a bike crash that took me off the bike for a while. I know we should talk about bike crashes.
No, dude, do it. It's perfect.
If bike crash, it took me out of biking for a while. It took me out of cycling. I came back on with no expectations, and everything was so sore, and I was so hyper aware of every joint that I was like, you know what, I'm going to do it right this time. So I got on the trainer, downloaded a whole series of bike drills, and just did those for 2 months.
And doesn't that sound parallel to everyone's journey in muscle building, right?
Absolutely.
For the first little while, you're like, I got this. I'm just going to man up. You get a little bit of progress, and then you hit a plateau, and you're like, shit, I don't really know what to do with this plateau. So most people go, well, my genetics suck, or, I'm just not eating right, or maybe I need steroids.
Yeah.
That's always the default, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and like, no, you just don't have to fucking do it in the gym.
Yeah.
That's about. And same with you on a bike. You're like, and then eventually they hurt themselves, and then they come find us, and they go, oh man, I wish I had learned this 5 years ago. Well, I've been telling you for the last 5 years, idiot.
Exactly. No, and it's so funny, man, because there's a couple good coaches out there. My friend Dennis Welch, he's a great endurance coach, and he's very much the same thing. He's very much with him. It's like, fix that form. People come to me and they are just horrible runners, and they're going to get fast, but they're never going to get as fast as they could be.
Right, exactly.
And that lack of skill, that lack of form, that lack of everything else is prematurely shortening the length of their career and
taking the joy out of it, man. If it's not fun because it hurts, you're gonna quit.
Yeah, and that's just it. If you're training for an ultra or something, and you got 100 miles to go, and the thing is, if you've put in 200 miles a week, 300 miles a week for the last 3 months, but 80% of those miles are complete garbage quality, that 100-miler, the last half, is just going to be sheer agony. Mm-hmm. If you've only put in 100 miles a week, but they've all been perfect, that 100-miler,
and I'm drawing parallels here, and you'll see this. I'm drawing parallels with people in contest prep, right? So off-season, they don't really spend the time learning the skill acquisition. They don't really set those primer phases like we teach here. Yeah. And they get into the contest time where you just got to pull the pin and you got to man up and take your balls out of your purse and go.
Yeah.
All of a sudden they get 6 weeks out and they're like, oh man, everything hurts. I hate this. Why do I have to do this? Well, because you haven't learned the skill acquisition.
Yeah.
So everything else in your body is breaking and you're not getting enough muscular stimulus to actually get your body to transform
exactly
the way you want it to. Amazing how many parallels there are, right?
Well, because I think both of these sports are very much it's about the long game in a lot of ways. And being, what your body is doing is what.
But even
dictates.
in the short term, it doesn't make sense to just go in and hammer, right?
No, it really doesn't. It really doesn't, because every workout has a much, much larger objective to it. And if you get focusing on the numbers on a given day doesn't mean a goddamn thing.
Right.
Because nobody, and I hate to say this, but I think a lot of strength sports get you into a bad habit, because not only is there instant gratification, but there's the instant ability to share with everybody what you've done on any specific day.
Right. And I think I spoke about this too, is I just recently finished an article about the paradox of hard work. And, everyone in the fitness industry either used to be an athlete or is comparing themselves to athletes, which is awesome. And then all athletes attach to the idea of like, oh, I fucking crushed it. I have these external goals. Either I ran faster or I jumped higher or I lift more. That's awesome. Those are athletes. Those are powerlifters. Those are football players, whatever happens to be. If your objective is transforming your body, what happens on the outside doesn't matter. It's what happens on the inside, right? Yeah. So getting away from that attachment of all these external raw goals, like, no, man, that shit is bullshit for us.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, yes, we still want to lift heavy and feel good, but the reality is, like I said earlier in the call, is all that matters is I have to create this very specific internal environment.
Yep.
And if we can remove that attachment to the external stimulus or the external vehicle, if you will, then it's so much such an empowering place to be to know that, hey man, I'm just like we did. We have this really simple workout, really, really focused stimulus, got the job done.
Yeah.
You'll find for the rest of the day, your body's going to feel great. Your brain is going to feel great. Your joints aren't going to hurt.
Yep.
Your body's going to use nutrients better. You're going to wake up leaner tomorrow. And you're like, man, I did so little. I wonder why that is.
Yeah.
Because you didn't have this crazy amount of systemic stress created inside your body that your body spends the next 48 hours trying to deal with.
And it's really funny because you asked me today how my hamstrings were, and they were sore. But what was interesting is for the first time that I felt my hamstrings sore in a long time, it's been the muscle belly that's sore.
Yeah.
Not the origin, not the attachment, nothing across the
my
joint.
lower back.
Not my lower back. It was literally just the muscle belly of the hamstring. And we basically just did hamstring curls.
Yeah.
But, it's been the kind of thing where for me, soreness associated with lifting has always been joint pain. It's always been tendon pain. It's always been something like that. And never this. And, it feels fantastic. It feels good. I feel like I've gotten a positive stimulus in there, and if the objective is to grow a muscle, then everything else, kind of like we were saying with, endurance, if you've got the wrong things becoming your limiting factor, then what is the point?
Yeah. Yeah. So when you say wrong things, like, if the muscle you're trying to train isn't the weakest link, then it can't, by definition, actually progress.
Yeah.
Something else will progress more.
Exactly.
So we were doing the tricep push downs today, and we're having a hard time keeping the scapula down. You're like, well, you can't actually load the long end of the tricep if the scapula is not stable.
Right.
That's just a simple reality. So I want to draw parallels here because you have a pretty extensive background in powerlifting. So I want to draw some parallels to your experience here with really, really focused muscular work and comparing it to how you would see benefits in powerlifting. So, we spoke about when we were doing our deadlifts on whatever day it was, a couple of days ago. Had you been able to use specific muscles more, maybe you would have been able to get a greater overall output. And I want to talk about that because I know a lot of our listeners are competitive athletes or they're competitive powerlifters, and they're so attached to the day-to-day numbers. Like, hey, yesterday I squatted 700, today I got to squat 710. Whereas if they took two steps back, and this is what we teach here, if we take two steps back and maybe we improve the recruitment of a couple of the prime movers here and then go back into the exercise you're trying to do before, you can often see a 20% increase. People are like, you're crazy, but the reality is, and you're less likely to injure yourself. So I want you to talk about that because obviously you know a lot about powerlifting and talking about the transfer of starting to apply degrees of specificity to your training.
Well, looking at a lot of powerlifting and actually just anything that involves not necessarily maximum force output, but maximum output against a given external load, which I think the difference is basically saying all that matters is how much weight's on the bar.
Right.
Your body is going to instinctively transit or focus on whatever is absolutely strongest.
It has to.
But what happens is over time, anything that's not actively being used as one of those prime movers starts to suffer. Mm-hmm. And for me, I was discussing with you how, that hamstring tear, and, I always had hamstring tears and hamstring issues, but you see how comparatively weak my hamstrings are in isolation. Mm-hmm. In any sort of strength move, in a strength sport, powerlifting, or anything else, once those prime movers fatigue, or if you lose your balance at all,
for something else.
It's looking for something else to fall back on. And as you get stronger with those prime movers and the absolute load on your back increases and increases and increases, if those other muscles aren't keeping up, your potential for injury skyrockets, your stability under load decreases dramatically. Yeah. And, I think that's honestly why I can't really lift that heavy anymore.
And it's as simple as exceeding your muscle's ability to contract, right? Like if you exceed that hamstring's ability to contract, it has no choice but to tear or to something. And oftentimes people are getting cramps. People are getting, muscle, quote unquote, light muscle pulls. And this is your body giving you like a big signal to be like, hey man, pay attention to me. Yeah. Cramps is often just a sign of instability or weakness, right? Yeah. So things like that. If you have a muscle that's cramping a lot and maybe it isn't a great prime mover for you, maybe it's time to make that muscle stronger in this movement. Hamstrings is the best example for most people, right? Like most people have never felt their hamstring in their life except by accident when the glutes stop working. And then oftentimes it's exceeding what the hamstrings can do.
Yeah,
oh shit, I pulled it.
They rip nicely. Right. Yeah, no, and it's funny because if you've seen my deadlift form, and I've got a couple Instagram videos on it, it seems to be a pretty strong deadlift. Yeah. But you've seen how comparatively weak my hamstrings are. And that, going by the conventional wisdom, that shouldn't be the case. Why would my hamstrings be weak if I'm, pulling?
You're, like we spoke about in our workout, like most athletes, you're really, really good at compensating.
Really good.
And that's often what makes a great athlete, right? Is like maybe some athletes don't have the best execution on things, but they're just really, really good at compensating and not breaking.
Yeah.
But if we can improve their overall execution to make the muscles maybe more balanced, so when they pick up a load, it's more evenly distributed.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden their predisposition to injury long term is massively decreased, and this is that alone from an athletic paradigm would be massive, right?
I mean, you look at the contributing, how much injury sets you back. Even a small injury where you take 2 months off and your competition takes 2 months on, you've now set yourself 4 months back from them.
Yeah,
and. The people don't like the idea of taking those off phases where they consolidate.
So in case you guys hadn't noticed, we started the podcast here just kind of organically, and you are listening to the Muscle Expert podcast, and we're back, and we're going to talk about, Alex, how you got into endurance racing, man. Because if I'm not mistaken, you started as a powerlifting athlete?
Yeah, no. So I've always been kind of a lifelong athlete. Played multiple sports going through middle school, high school, everything else. Got to college, wasn't really good enough at anything to play kind of at a Division I level, so fell out of athletics in general for a while, but got back into it with lifting. Discovered I had pretty good leverages. Kind of fell in love with the idea of lifting as much weight as possible.
Say that, because that's just the reality, right?
That really
either you're good at it or you're not.
Yeah, exactly. So I got into that and really, really enjoyed it. But most of the sports I played growing up were. I played football, but I also did soccer. I did track. I did a lot of other things. So I realized I kind of missed the cardio portion, the go outside and run portion of things. So when I got back into running, it was really just running a 5K on a bit of a dare. And when I was training for that, the first training run I went out for, it was great. I went out. I felt fantastic. I was moving fast. My lungs felt great. And then that was for about the first 11 to 12 seconds or so. And then everything just went downhill from there. And, I realized more than anything else, I had this massive gaping hole in my fitness. And I felt terrible. I felt like I wasn't really physically capable of doing what I wanted to do. And, I started thinking about a lot of the health implications and everything else and said, okay, this is something I need to do. So, naturally registered for a few marathons, which is precisely what we were just talking about is the wrong next move, which it was. Everything broke down. I started having shin splint issues, the whole panoply of issues. But, stepped back from that about a year later and realized, okay, there's got to be a more intelligent way to do this, which is why I started backing off and thinking about ways that, you can make strength training and endurance training kind of support each other rather than interfere with each other. I'm thinking about specific considerations, being a larger individual, having certain strengths, certain both physiological and mental predispositions.
So by this point, you're already doing powerlifting. You're already a powerlifter. And what did you weigh?
I was anywhere from 220 to 240 at the time.
So you're still a large human to be doing 5Ks and even thinking about marathons.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Well, and the thing was, at the time, there was no data out there on it. People just, you'd go to the start of a race and they look at you like you were going to eat all their snack food.
Exactly.
And that was about all they assumed. But, there wasn't a lot on that. And I said, well, what resources are there for, wanting to run as an athlete who has great power output, but, just carrying around a lot of weight? And so we developed a lot of this stuff from scratch, looking at energy expenditure and, what a lifetime, what heavy squatting for 5 years is going to do to your pelvic tilt while you run. Because there's some big changes that go with that. Yeah. And, kind of bringing all that together, it's been really interesting just, especially, I hate to say it, but things like CrossFit that are moving a lot of strength-based athletes more towards running, and you're seeing like CrossFitters run horribly. And it's always interesting to see that because there's no attention being paid. They spend so much time on attention to form on certain things in the gym, but nobody cares about form or focus on endurance training.
Do they though? I mean, maybe at the highest level I know they do, but a lot of times, like, I observe. And it just seems like it's just an output-based culture. It's like, hey, man, you have this much time, or like, just go.
Yeah.
And then they end up, coming and learning from us because they want to learn.
Well, there are certain crews like Invictus that spend a lot of time on, and and CJ over there is fantastic with his focus with his competitors, especially on.
If it's a competitor, obviously,
but he applies a lot of that. But for the most part, it's output based. Mm-hmm. But even then, they'll still have a day where they focus on form for weightlifting. Nobody ever does a focus on form for running, ever.
Man,
at all.
Well,
period.
yeah, because people think, well, we just, we did it when we were kids.
Yeah, it's natural.
Right. So, not that any of my listeners are going to be like, hey, man, I want to go out and run a marathon. Maybe they will. But
Maybe they will. You never know.
Good for you. So, what does form for running entail? Because, an endurance athlete goes, well, what the fuck is form for squatting and deadlifting? Isn't it just like
Just put the bar on your back?
Yeah, or just pick the damn thing up.
Yeah.
So, we know it's a science. So, obviously, running is probably even more of a science because there's so many muscles to coordinate. And so, can we talk? Is there things we can talk about that would give people the first line of defense against shitty form?
Things you see all the time. And as I go through this checklist, you're going to start thinking a lot of it really sounds familiar.
Sure.
So little things like chin up, no slouching, shoulders back.
That's not little things, man. It's that's life skills.
That's
right?
life skills.
When you come in the gym, you cannot train if your posture sucks.
Yep.
You'll never build muscle.
Yep. The other thing is this kind of tight but relaxed. You don't want your arms floppy.
Right.
You want them, up and controlled. You don't want this flopping crossover. You don't want massive swinging. You want them relaxed, but you want them kind of in place.
Sure.
So that kind of tight but relaxed, or relaxed tension, as you call it, should be the
hopefully it gets
entire
to a
upper
place
body.
where it's mindless.
Yeah, it is.
It just happens.
It's mindless, and it's so much easier because people think, well, if you're relaxed, if you're tight the whole time, if you're a little bit tight, isn't that going to make you fatigued? Not nearly as fatigued as swinging your arms back and forth and constantly having that eccentric pulling.
So for people who observe that they maybe don't have great form or great posture, what are some things? Is weight training the only, is that your first recommendation, or is it just get out there and do some running with the focus on being proper form? Where do you see the greatest transfer of skill acquisition?
Honestly, both. Weight training with terrible form is just going to reinforce bad habits.
Exactly.
But the biggest thing is telling people you can spend all this time weight training and thinking about keeping that neutral posture, neutral spine, and everything else, and they forget it all when they go out there and run. The most important thing is to say it's the same thing.
Right.
Because everything in running is about minimizing the work that your body has to do to fight itself. Mm-hmm. You keep all that weight right over your pelvis, and you're eliminating inefficiency. You stop flailing your arms all over the place, you're eliminating inefficiency. All your legs have to do is move your body.
Man, I'm kind of envisioning, so I play sports a lot with my kids now, and sometimes I get on the treadmill and run for 5 or 10 minutes, nothing long. I'm still over 270 pounds. But thinking about how long it would take me to become an efficient runner is probably obscene. All the bad habits, if I had somebody there watching me, maybe we could accelerate the learning curve. But similar to skill acquisition in a squat or deadlift, if you're at home and you're like, man, I really want to learn how to be good at that, I could see it taking me, really, really small baby steps, at least 2 months before. Probably 6 months, but 2 months to where I thought, I'm like, okay, I feel like I can actually go out and not hurt myself.
I would guarantee you it would take you less time than most, though.
Really? Well,
working with bodybuilders who understand muscle mechanics, muscle contraction, form, and everything else. If I tell you to retract your shoulder blades, you're going to do that better than most, but better than anybody probably. And that's a big part of the learning process. That kind of proprioception. Where are you? Where is your body in relation to itself? Right. That I think a lot of people really struggle with. And whether it's running or on a bike or anything else, I can tell you on the bike, okay, bring your shoulder blades back and down, tighten your core, don't let your pelvis rotate forward, keep your elbows down, keep your hands relaxed. That's how you climb. Oh, and don't let your pelvis rock. You're going to be able to put that together in 2 minutes while on a climb.
So this is a really important thing for us to discuss here. I think this will give people some really good golden nuggets. So I know in muscle building, in anyone looking to transform their body, skill acquisition is massive. So I need you to accelerate the rate of skill acquisition as much as possible, and we can talk about some hacks to do that. But the thing I found to be the greatest hindrance is energetic deficit. So if people are fatigued, depleted, or don't have enough calories, their ability to retain skill acquisition goes down.
Yep.
Do you notice the same?
Yep.
Good. How the hell do you mitigate that endurance? Because inevitably, you're challenging all the energy systems, or a lot of the energy systems. And so I'm going to guess people are going to be neurologically fatigued, energetically fatigued.
Yep.
How do you mitigate that as far as skill acquisition? Because I'm sure there'll be a lot of transfer into muscle building.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things is, obviously pre-workout nutrition, peri-workout nutrition, and all that is so underrated for a lot of people when they first get into endurance training. The whole fasted cardio mindset. It may work.
So if I get out there and ride for 4 hours fast, it's not a good thing?
It's probably not a great thing. I mean, the thing is, if you're trying to use it for fat loss or whatever else, that can be fine. But if you're trying to actually focus on it and focus on what you're doing and maintain your energy levels and maintain that output through the end and maintain that, psychological engagement, you have to prepare for it nutrition-wise. You have to get in the food you need and, especially electrolytes you need during activity because that depletes so quickly. Right. Especially training in the summer, training anywhere warm. You see most people don't realize that the first thing to go when they start to crack or start to bonk in any sort of endurance activity is actually electrolytes, which just then leads. It's not lack of carbs. It's not lack of glycogen. Most people have more than enough for anything that's not a 4-hour all-out effort. It's really it's that hydration, electrolytes, and just that. That is the first place I would tell most people to start is you're going to have a high sweat rate, you're going to have a high turnover rate. The biggest thing you can do if you want to stay mentally engaged and make sure that the quality of your movement at the end of an hour is the same as it was at the beginning of the hour, start with that pre-workout electrolyte proper ratio during the workout. Be proactive about that. And it's not even an issue of thirst. It's saying basically let's keep everything fueled throughout the entire duration. It doesn't have to be high calorie even. Right. It just has to be, isocaloric and balanced to continue to support your body with all the nutrients it needs for that entire duration of activity.
So one thing that kind of came up there in what you're saying that I think would be extremely interesting and I'm very curious about, I'm sure a lot of my listeners may be, is how would you compare, there's a couple parts to this question, how would you compare the rate or degree of oxidative stress generated from endurance training? Because one of the things I love about you, man, is you're probably the best research guy and read guy in the entire sport as far as I can see. How would you compare the amount or degree of oxidative stress generated from endurance training compared to effective bodybuilding style training?
I think in endurance training, it depends on the specific modality, it depends on the duration. I think a lot of endurance training, the level of, if you're going through a lactate threshold or an anaerobic power threshold or anaerobic power phase in your training, the oxidative stress is astronomically high. You're doing a lot of high intensity output work. The amount of repetition, the amount of minutes you're spending with your body producing these metabolites overall is incredibly high.
Right.
A properly done base phase where you're working strictly on aerobic systems, keeping the level of intensity down, staying within that, zone 2 heart rate and allowing all the aerobic systems to actually process efficiently, allowing circulation to process efficiently, allowing oxygen to circulate efficiently without getting this, massive, again, metabolite buildup and clearance issues and everything else. Oxidative stress can actually be relatively low. So it absolutely. But the thing is, people are so bad at regulating intensity in endurance sports that they always tend to shy towards the side of more metabolite buildup, more oxidative stress, more issues. I see that problem all the time, and people wonder why, even in their base phase, they feel so terrible. Because they're supposed to be doing easy work, and it never is.
It's funny that, you look at most endurance athletes, and this is maybe a shot, and people are going to hate me for this, but most of them aren't particularly lean. Like, they're kind of mid-road. But yet they're doing so much endurance work.
Yeah.
Is that kind of a testament to the fact that they're just maybe pushing that anaerobic threshold too often? So they're just breaking down muscles.
Exactly. There's nothing left in their body. They're not able to maintain a general anabolic state. Because simply they can't. But you look at world-class endurance athletes, even the ones who aren't rail thin, but the world-class endurance athletes, they are lean.
Very lean.
But they've got every incentive to actually pay attention to the relative intensity and keep it within the parameters.
And they've put in the work on the execution, so they're really efficient. So even when they are pushing a little bit, it's still the most efficient version.
Exactly. We were chatting about training age the other day, and these individuals have spent so many years mastering their craft in that regard that for them, they can put in a lot of work at a very high pace. And, the high age grouper who's looking at that going, I'm going to follow that, they're going to get absolutely annihilated. They don't realize how comparatively easy that work is. It's like an amateur following a pro bodybuilder's routine. Right. They're going to get absolutely destroyed by it, not realizing that for them, that output needed to sustain that is way beyond their threshold. Whereas for the pro, it's sustainable. And you see that in endurance sports constantly.
Yeah, you and I do a workout together. your perceived effort's going to be way higher than mine because there's so many things that you're paying attention to that I don't have to because it's unconscious.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yep.
brace this, think about this, pull this in this direction. And for me, I've already got all those things down.
Yeah.
So not only am I not burning physical energy, but I'm also not burning mental energy because it's just a secondary thing. I'm just like, I get this.
Yeah.
You know, so similar thing with endurance athletes, right?
Well, it's, and the thing I tell people is train like a pro athlete. And people are like, oh, okay, great. And they think that means, okay, go out there and do the workout. It doesn't mean do their workouts. It means pay attention to intensity, pay attention to your capabilities. Don't exceed them. Don't think working harder is going to get you to the goal. Treat yourself like an actual athlete where you need to stay within your parameters, stay within that energy system you want to use. Pay attention to your recovery. Be as proactive about recovery as actual stimulus, because if you can't recover from it, you may as well not do it. Pro athletes follow that. Pro endurance athletes know that.
Right.
If they're not recovering, what is the point of doing your next workout? There is none. So,
man, so similar to bodybuilding, right? You know, since removing myself from professional bodybuilding, you know, the immediate attachment to the end result was always there. I'm like, this workout has to be this. I have to crush it. Since I've removed myself, like you say, I've been so much more attached to very, very, specific outcomes, specific results, rather than like every workout has to be just hard. Mm-hmm. Now I'm like, we talked about, you become much more process oriented. Yeah. So similar, I'm sure, to becoming a great athlete, endurance athlete.
Well, and that's why you look at the proliferation of online coaching, for example, with endurance athletes, and I think one of the reasons is, kind of giving that monitoring of objectives to a coach allows the athlete to be process oriented, and that makes such a massive difference. It may not even be that the program from the coach is any better, but simply being able to, as an athlete, to be process-oriented rather than goal-oriented, letting the coach manage those goals for you. All you have to do is think about the process. It improves endpoints tremendously because the athlete may not even know what the objective of each workout is. All they're being told is, okay, this is what I want you to focus on. Do this for X number of minutes. Do this for X number of minutes. Where it fits in the bigger scheme of things, you don't have to worry about. Just focus on the discrete internal objective of this workout here, and let me worry about how it fits into the final end goal.
So here's the problem with that, right? Is like, that's the paradigm people run into in the fitness industry with coaches, where a coach would go, don't worry about it, just do what I tell you. But the reality is 90% of the coaches don't have a clue what they're doing. And I'm sure the same thing is true in endurance sports, man. Like you know what you're doing. You're great at what you do, and so is your team. But I'm sure there's people out there who are like, man, I just fucking ran an ultra marathon. Just shut up and do what I say because I said so, without understanding energy systems, without understanding internal and physiological stressors. Yep. You know that shit, man, but you take it for granted, just like I do, right? Yeah. I'm like, man, just shut up and listen to what I say.
This,
Whereas I wouldn't tell most people out there to just, put that power into their coach's hands.
No, gosh.
So right? So realistically, like, maybe we shouldn't give you that advice. maybe like, when your coach says something, you should question it. Unless you're working with your team.
Well, and I think maybe that comes down to kind of a more moral quandary here is, can you even tell somebody to hire a coach if the coach doesn't know what they're doing?
Right. But how do we know? That's the thing. It's so subjective. Like, so I'm getting into endurance sports, or I shouldn't say that. I'm going to attempt an endurance feat. I don't say I'm going to get into endurance, although I think long term, I think I would love it.
It's addictive. It's addictive.
So I'm just going to go out there and go on the internet, and I'm going to search. I want to do a endurance bike race or a marathon, triathlon or something. And the first coach that pops up, boom, that's the guy I'm going to hire, right? And that's the reality with a lot of people out there. They're like, how do I know who to hire, man? And not everyone knows that, you are the guy who's the tip of the spear when it comes to doing all the research, and you are, really challenging. You're creating all the research ultimately, like you said, didn't exist. So what are the first things people need to be looking for other than go and check out your site? Like, I wouldn't know where to start, man. Like, is it just like, hey, I did a couple ultra marathons, or I did a couple Ironman triathlons?
It's tough, man. The problem is, it's so saturated out there.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone's a coach. Everyone's a damn coach.
I did a 5K once.
I did a bunch of really fast 5Ks. Because, I mean, the thing about finding the right coach is it's always hard when you're starting out, and this is, I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah.
So how am I going to find an appropriate mentor or teacher for this thing?
This guy's got an Iron Man tattoo, dude. He must be cool.
Yeah, hey man.
I would get one if I did it.
Oh, you got to do it just for that.
Yeah.
But I think the most important thing is find somebody who's movement focused first. Don't find somebody who produces the most pro athletes. Don't find somebody who...
I'm smiling over here because if you guys don't take that parallel to muscle building, you got big problems.
Because that's just it. Most people, what cuts their endurance careers short is some nagging injury, chronic injury. The number of people who come to us and say, yeah, I used to run, but my shin splints took me out or stress fractures took me out every single time. We always start people from a movement-based perspective. Find a movement coach. Find an endurance coach who talks about a movement-based approach. Love it. Because what that's going to do is even if their programming isn't the greatest in the world, that almost doesn't matter.
Man, so true.
But because that's it. Because that working with that person, you're going to be a healthy runner. You're going to move well. You're going to be able to handle the volume. And even if the program you're on isn't the greatest one out there, even if it's not the winningest program, it doesn't matter because you're going to have put in all those consistent months of training without injury, without issue, and everything else. You may start slower than everybody else, but while they blaze ahead in their speed and then get hurt and back off and blaze ahead and get hurt and back off, you're going to be just steadily progressing.
Right. The funny thing is, man, I say this to people all the time is the further you ascend to the top of the knowledge ladder, the best coaches in the world are all saying the same shit. Well, it doesn't matter what sport, right? If you're training for football, if you're training for hockey, if you're training for endurance sports, bodybuilding, we're all saying the same message. It's the dilution that happens at the bottom of the pyramid where people are like, oh, you need to do this. You need to do more sets and more reps. You need to do you need to work harder and lift heavier. Like when you get to the top of the ladder of the best in the business in any industry, in any athletic endeavor, they're always saying the exact same thing. They're saying, hey, man, none of that shit matters. Sets, reps, duration, load, all this stuff is so secondary to, well, let's get this first. Let's get your execution first. And it's amazing. I love to hear you say that, man, because it's such a reinforcement for what we're doing, and we're going to have a fun time doing this because, like, you're going to be on me. So for those of you that don't know, Alex and I have decided to do an exchange here where I'm going to train him for a bodybuilding show, and he's going to train me for an endurance bike challenge. So, but I love to know that we found the right coach, right? Like, I wouldn't want to get on a bike with somebody who's a coach who says, hey, man, get out there and ride 30 miles. Yeah. And I'd be like, dude, my hip hurts and my knee hurts and fuck, my back hurts. Yeah. And like, well, what am I doing wrong? Nothing. Shut up and work harder.
Shut up, we'll do 40 miles next week, exactly. Or we'll take a week off. And you go, okay, well, that's great.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, that's beautiful, man, because that's the reality. If you want to get great at anything, guys, you need to master the basics first, right? Master the fundamentals. Mm-hmm. And the reality is, whether you're trying to do a marathon or you're trying to be under 10% body fat, the reality is you're trying to be great at something. That's not just like, hey, I want to go out and F around a little bit. Like, no, you're trying to be one of the best in the world. Yeah. Like to walk around under 10% body fat, don't kid yourself. That's a feat, man. That's not easy to do. Same thing with doing anything that's over 10K in endurance. It's like, man, you're becoming one of the elite human beings of the world, so you need to respect that. Yeah. And as you said, you need to become a professional and respect the reality that, hey, you've made that decision. Don't take it lightly because you're discrediting all those people who have come before you and who have worked their asses off to get where they are.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also, in what state are you going to be when you arrive at that goal anyway? If you arrive there and you're beaten up and you're broken and mentally you're done and you already quit 4 weeks ago, but you're finishing it just because you spent so much time on it. Right. The event's not going to be your victory lap. It's not going to be this accomplishment. It's not going to be something that gets you excited about the next thing. It's going to be the end of a nightmare.
Yeah, but people take pride in that, though, right? Because they want to go back and commiserate about how hard they worked and how much they hashtag crushed it or the hashtag killed it. I'm like, dude, you didn't kill shit. You just sucked to begin with.
Yeah,
right? So it's hard for you.
Stumbled across the proverbial finish line there, beaten up and everything broken with 3 ice packs. And it's that image of this broken warrior crawling across. That's not what we want.
It's the hardest thing I did in my life. Yeah, well, because you're training something. You had the best quote on Instagram recently, and you said, You can say it, man. If your race day was the hardest day of your life, your training sucked.
Your training sucked, exactly. Yeah. Because the event itself, the event should not be training. The event should not be where, it'll push you to the limit, but it should be to push yourself to a limit that you've prepared for.
Right.
All the training up to that point should have prepared you for this event. And your training is going to be tough. And it's always going to be hard for one reason or another, whether it's sitting there trying to get your damn scapula down while you keep your elbow in place and you're struggling with this 7.5 pound plate. God,
right.
that was terrible. But whether it's something like that or it's just the cumulative volume in those accumulation phases or anything else, your training is always going to be hard. And some of it's going to be the hardest stuff you've ever done, in part because it's so easy to want to quit because nobody will ever know.
Right.
But so when you get to the event itself, that's the time it's going to tell you, how much did you quit in the past. But your training is going to be hard. Your training has to prepare you, and your training has to be that process orientation to get you to your goal.
Cool, man. So I love the parallels, and this is why we decided to do this podcast. Is because we were chatting and saw so many amazing parallels between an elite endurance athlete and an elite or an aspiring elite physique athlete, and the necessity in creating an internal focus, the necessity in mastering the process and removing yourself from the attachment to these external goals and external focus. Because I'm sure you run into this stuff a lot, man. There's so many guys out there who's just their calling card, like I work hard, I crush it. And it's just the most terrible place to be, guys. If you're an endurance athlete or someone looking to become great at any sport, respect the people who've come before you, respect the sport, and master the craft first before you even attempt to start to push any type of personal best or try to do anything that's an endeavor, whether it be powerlifting and bodybuilding. Like, there's such a perfect craft, and there's somebody out there who can teach you how to do it right. I'm not saying you're going to choose the right person to begin with, but if you're looking to do endurance work, Alex is your guy. Alex, so once people have mastered, how long do you think? So let's say you've got a person, let's say me. How long is it going to take me to master the craft of, let's say I'm going to do a triathlon, which I'm not doing a triathlon anymore. Maybe
don't shut the door.
But I want to learn this skill. So, I'm a huge student of skill acquisition because it's such a huge component of what I do. Plus, people out there who have kids who are trying to teach them athletics. Like, what strategies have you begun to implement to accelerate the rate of skill acquisition? I know we talked about this briefly, but I want to go back to that.
So, first of all, an individual such as yourself who's always been process-oriented, who's always been very cognizant of your form, proprioception, where you are, it's going to be a lot faster of a process for you. So that already is an advantage. That's a translatable skill, and sure. I think that's something that people need to pay attention to with these things. Is that having that focus in one area is universal to any sport or activity you do. So if you find that you're struggling with that in one area, you better get used to it, because no matter what you do, it's going to be part of it. What we're going to do, and the biggest thing is that first 2 months of skill acquisition. And first of all, the answer to the question of how long is it going to take to master is, of course, like anything else, it's a lifetime.
Yeah, exactly.
So the first thing is the first 2 months, there are going to be almost no external goals whatsoever. I don't care how long you're going to go for. Don't care what kind of distance you're going to do, what the particular structure of the workout is going to be. Each workout is going to have a specific example with form, with here's what I want to see fatigue first, and everything else. And by removing that goal from it and by saying, okay, we're going to focus specifically on this one specific training challenge. And that's generally what I do for a lot of people who are going into endurance sports. It's not going to say today is not a 3-mile run, or today is not a 30-mile or a 30-minute bike. Today is specifically a day when we're going to work on the draw phase of the pedal stroke. Mm-hmm. That's it. That's all we're going to do. So this is going to be the structure of the workout. And once you hit the point where you no longer believe that you're training this properly, we're going to stop the workout.
Perfect.
And by doing that, by having that focus for the first couple months, it's basically going to say, okay, we're going to have perfected these skills to the point where we don't need a lengthy buildup then into the volume phase. Because we're going to do probably a couple of other things just to build basic conditioning that's not going to involve the target sport. There may be, a little bit of rowing in there, or a little bit of whatever else, or even step or anything else, just to kind of keep that cardiovascular system going. But we're going to ensure that all the work done in the target sport is going to be very, very focused on skill acquisition. There's no sense of getting onto the bike, focusing all this time on form, and then saying, okay, go burn out for 30 minutes. Because all you're going to do at that point is burn out and unlearn all those skills you've just developed.
Break the habits. There you go.
Break the habits.
Beautiful.
So it's going to be, here's an intense 20 to 30 minute period of skill acquisition. And then if we want to burn out, let's do a different modality where the skill focus is less important.
Man, and you're saying this, and all I'm thinking is about like powerlifting, and bodybuilding too, but like someone trying to learn a squat or a deadlift or a bench press, this is the best advice that anyone could ever receive is spend a good amount of time. That should be one of the primary focuses of a workout, right? So go in the gym and say, hey man, my objective today is just to learn this skill. I have no attachment to how much, how long, any of that shit. Just go in there and make sure this is perfect. And whatever that feels like, and once you feel something start to break, like you say, you've given them a tangible cue, like once you can no longer do this, it's over, and then take that and now go do the work on something else. And this is, from my perspective, where everybody goes wrong, is everybody feels as though, and you've been in powerlifting, man, everybody feels as though they've got to build volume. They have to build work with that skill, with the squat or with the deadlift. And man, I don't know if I'm so against anything, but I think it's just backward thinking. Like, why the hell would I want to do squats 3-4 times a week with anything that resembles a max load that could potentially break down my skill? This doesn't make any sense.
And that's the thing is it's like, I mean, first of all, there are those who, and I hate to go back to this because this is such a lame excuse, but you say those who are naturally built for it. And that really just means that those who have a particular physiology, physique, or movement patterns that lend themselves very well to a specific movement, and the skill acquisition period for them is very short and very easily retained. Because sport performance is just the skilled application of physical capabilities. If that skilled component is very easy learned, and they have the right physique for it, and the right build, and the right mechanics, then they can focus a lot more on repeated application of it. And so, this, Bulgarian method and all this high volume stuff people do, if you have a high level of skill or your skill is very, very sticky, whether it's because of your physique or anything else, then great, you can do that. That's not the case for 99% of people.
And I love that you brought that up. So you and Adam were having a conversation about that during our workout the other day, and picking when to do your work or picking what skills you should be doing work on. I'd love for you to talk about that, man, because you guys went off and started speaking about if you're built for this, do this. If you're not built for that, why would you do more of that? Like, so someone's going, like an example being, if I'm a really shitty deadlifter, well, you just need to deadlift more. You need to do it often. May not be the case, right? Like, so speak about that.
Because I mean, I think the thing is, the worse at something you are, I mean, if you are not particularly inclined towards something, whether it's because of your physique or, again, injury, whatever, your skill breakdown is going to happen very quickly because you're going to go into massive patterns of overcompensation and compensating using other muscle groups. You're going to default back into patterns in which you're strong. Your skill acquisition is going to be very, very slow to build and very quick to lose. So the more volume you do, the more spend you time practicing that skill while fatigued, the faster and the greater percentage of work you're going to do that is not about acquiring skill, but is rather just about testing those physical limits and or potentially falling back into negative patterns.
Reinforcing
negative patterns. So for those individuals, it's like, well, every single time we do this movement that you are not meant for, we want you to be on your game. We want you to be fresh. We want you to be paying attention. And we want you to be able to focus on all the cues for that specific day. If we just want to build your strength, we want to build your hamstrings, we want to build your glutes, we want to build your, power off the bottom, let's do that other ways. Let's do that other ways that physically you're able to push yourself in with a minimal mental investment, and let's keep that movement-specific work, high skill, and let's be judicious with when we apply it.
What percentage of the time are you actually what percentage of the time are you going to start pushing the effort within the skill, or at what point in the preparation for the event are you going to push the effort during the skill? So, if ever.
Yeah, that number goes up as the season goes on, but very much depends on the individual. Depends on skill acquisition rate and everything else, but it absolutely goes up. When you may start, and this is even with endurance sports, you may start out only doing 5 or 10% of your hard work on the bike. And as you get closer and closer to the event, obviously near the event, it's going to be 80 or 90%. But that curve, whether it's linear or whether it starts slow and builds up quickly or whether it builds up fast, is all going to depend on how sticky that skill acquisition is for you.
Beautiful. That's such a great life skill, man. In any athletic endeavor is, and it's such an individual thing. So anyone out there looking to get better at squatting or deadlifting or riding a bike or running, paying attention to those things, man. Like, how much is my form breaking down? Any specific cues, and this may be a vague question, but any specific cues you can start giving people, whether it be for running or biking, that they want to look out for, where they typically would break first? Is there like some avatars that you see, like, oh, someone who's bad on a bike is going to feel this, or someone who's a bad runner is going to feel that?
Yep.
I'm sure there's the inevitable ones, but like, is there anything specifically where you're like, hey, this is going to be the telltale sign. If this happens, stop that there. That's your body saying, hey, stop that before you really hurt yourself.
Biggest things, a lot of larger people, when they start running, have a lot of calf pain. A lot of that comes from a lot of anterior pelvic tilt and a lot of leaning forward with the upper body. Most people who are, and you'll see this in posture all the time, that forward rotated shoulders and anterior pelvic tilt, a little bit of back hyperextension, that's all from excessive lifting, excessive arch and everything else. That lends itself to a lot of that calf pain and actually shin splints, because people will tend to overstride when they run. For those people, all they need to focus on is, again, kind of keeping those shoulders back, keeping that lower back relaxed, keeping their abs tight and braced, which is going to help resist that hyperextension. Biggest thing for most runners when they start out, especially those who've been strength training, is focus on those things.
So that's perfect, because I was going to say shin splints, man. I know everybody's like, man, I get shin splints. How do you overcome it? I'm like, man, where do you start, right? Because if you're running and you get shin splints, it's not just like, hey, because you have weak shins. It's like, no, something else is wrong.
It's everything in running comes down to, just like anything else, just like any issue in biking, like any issue in lifting. If you're having a problem over and over again, it means physiologically you're doing something wrong. It doesn't just happen. So, and that's just it. Shin splints always come from either overstriding, coming down on the heel and snapping that foot forward, or overstriding and reaching out too far and trying to stick your toe out. And all of that comes from, excessively, because when you get that really tight anterior pelvic tilt, your hamstrings are stretched, your lower back is tight, your abs are weak, your shoulders are forward, and all that is going to screw up your stride. So that is the most important thing. If people focus on that when they start running, guarantee you better outcomes.
Do you have any go-to exercise in the gym to help people start overcoming that? Like, so I know, and my belief is, your body doesn't learn things in segments. So you could tell people, hey, like, go correct your anterior pelvic tilt, or hey, go, stabilize your pelvis or stabilize your core. But if I want to learn to do all these things together while I'm running, there's a lot of shit to coordinate there. They all need to be happening together. Do you have some kind of routine or some specific exercises in the gym where you like to allow people to do those to acquire the skill?
One of my favorite things for running is actually just dumbbell walking lunges. Reason for that is if you rotate your shoulders forward, you're going to feel it real quick. And it also actually lets you focus on bracing your midsection. So I'll have them do just very light runs back and forth of dumbbell walking lunges. And what that does is you basically say, okay, keep those shoulders back, keep those abs tight, and it keeps that stable upper body, where they say your upper body is just meant to be focused over your midsection when you move. And that pattern over and over and over again really helps to train that.
Man, that's brilliant, because the idea of like, hey, I'm going to put these weights in your hands, and if you're out of alignment, you're going to know real fast.
Because people say, oh, yeah, my trap started hurting. I say, well, that's because you're going like this. That's because you're leaning forward.
And you wouldn't be able to put any substantial amount of load there, because one of the muscles is definitely going to start, or your lower back's going to start to hurt. And that's a really good acid test. Like, hey, man, let's check your posture. Like, you're good standing there with nothing, but let's put a 30-pound dumbbell in your hand.
That's one of the assessments we do. And if we'll tell people to do just a long series of walking lunges like that, we don't care how many they do. And we don't tell them this. We just tell them, okay, well, what hurt? And then telling that lets us know what's going on with their upper body posture that's, may not bother them 3 miles into a run, but 10 miles into the run, it's going to be destroying them.
And I see a huge application there, because when I do lunges and when I teach lunges, there's a huge component. Like, probably my biggest focus is pelvic stability. So I'm trying to activate my pelvic floor, trying to make sure my rectus femoral, my abdominal wall is strong. So I'm not allowing any pelvic tilt to happen when I'm doing my lunges. So wouldn't that sound just like perfect for running? Right?
That is perfect for running and cycling. Actually, is resisting pelvic movement and pelvic tilt, because all of that in cycling, it's terrible because you bleed power. when you do that.
Yeah.
And everything about cycling is being able to maintain that knee alignment and hip alignment to allow you to transfer power efficiently through the knee down to the pedal with minimal loss side to side. And anytime you rotate the pelvis or allow it to come out of alignment, you're essentially sending power and imparting that into rotating the body rather than pushing the pedal down. Huge loss of power.
So many parallels with training, right?
Yeah.
Like we're trying to be as efficient as possible, creating this internal focus.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Actually, yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to do when I load my quads, right? If I'm training a quad, leg extension or a leg press, like so many people, you see this extraneous movement at the hip or, a leg extension, you see how many everybody's hips are going in and out. I'm like, no, man, like all that is potential lost output.
Yeah.
Similar thought process.
And that's exactly it. And rather than with bodybuilding, it's certainly going to punish you on the far end when you realize that you were essentially wasting some of your time because
and when you put a bunch of load in it, it's going to break something.
Exactly. And with endurance sports, with cycling, it's the same thing. You're saying, look, you even if you're only losing a pound of output on every single pedal stroke, 1 pound of output on every single pedal stroke for 6 hours.
That's a lot. That's a lot of pounds.
That's a lot of pounds, and that is that's the difference of. It may seem like you're losing a second per minute, but a second per minute over the course of 360 minutes. I mean, think about it.
How much are the most elite athletes paying attention to this stuff? Because I've been fascinated for 15 to 20 years about Tour de France guys, because like that to me is unbelievable.
Yeah.
How much are they paying attention to it? I'm sure the answer is very high, but do they have any specific methods and metrics they're using to make sure that they're efficient? Like the best guys in the world. Like, what are they doing to make sure that they're like flawless?
The best guys in the world, they are always on the trainer. They're always working with the bike mechanics to make sure that the positioning is good. They're always working. They're always videoing. Every single session, even the outside rides, they're always being videoed. They're always being critiqued. They're always getting feedback. They're always looking, because at that point, again, but their training age is so good. These people are built for cycling. I say that with air quotes because nobody's built for it, but they're naturally very good at it. But they're still receiving constant feedback. And their coaches are still always looking for little things like analyzing the difference in power output between the two sides. And if they start to see the wattage output increase by 0.1% on one side versus the other, they say, okay, what's going on here? This is something we need to address. What's the issue here? Let's either introduce a strength training phase or do some unilateral work here to see why we're getting this asymmetrical output.
How are they measuring that? So they just basically checking like output on the pedals?
Yeah, they have there are power meters that actually can be on each pedal that actually assesses how much force is going down into it, and that's they're constantly in the process of data collection. And again, they're not necessarily, the athlete isn't necessarily processing the data, but all the coaches and all the team are always looking at the data, constantly getting the feedback. Now, athletes can. If you have the ability to look at your own data and say, wait a minute, there's something going on here, that's so valuable. But I think it's just so important to note that the top teams in the entire world, and these are multi-million-dollar cycling teams, are always paying attention to that minutia, because at that level of competition, you can't afford to give up 0.1% to your opposition, because 0.1% is the difference between first in the Tour de France and getting dropped off the back at the day before the finish.
I'd be very curious to hear mitigation strategies, because obviously in what we do, in drawing parallels to muscle building, everyone's always like, well, how do I balance this out? And the reality is, man, it could be so different for everybody. And, I know for me, you're probably going to have to put me on like a circular track, because one leg is going to be doing twice as much work as the other one. But that's the reality. So how do we, ultimately train the nervous system to, obviously compensation is inevitable, but how do we minimize, allowing other muscles to start compensating? That'd be a very interesting, study for me, because I already know. I mean, my pelvis is jacked, and one leg's going to do a lot more work. And is that going to predispose me to injuries on that side? And then what are the mitigation strategies?
Yeah, well, because one of the biggest things it's going to be realizing is working up to the level of the limiting factor and not just pushing you harder because you can. Mm-hmm. I mean, if we say, look, the maximum output we can sustain for 20 minutes, with your body moving with good stability is X number of watts. Your lungs and cardiovascular system can push further than that, but at that point you're already getting into these compensatory patterns. That's not doing us any good. Right. Because all we're doing at that point is perpetuating a poor movement that's eventually going to cause problems. So by making sure that, again, this form focus, keeping the majority of work in a frame where you can actually focus on stability. Mm-hmm. that's going to be where it all comes from. And that's going to need a lot of feedback. It's going to need a lot of videos, a lot of looking at form, a lot of, very, very over conveying subjective feedback on different things, and paying attention to the details and realizing that soreness and injury and everything else, even small ones, that's all valuable feedback, because that's your body telling you what's going on, even if you don't realize it.
Yep. Dude, that's great. And I'm drawing so many parallels with muscle building. What I want us to do is kind of shift towards some more personal things for you. Talking about, first question I want to ask is, from your perspective, what was the hardest endeavor or hardest feat that you've ever accomplished?
I would say the hardest thing I ever did was the second Ironman that I did. And I think it was hard for a lot of reasons. It was hard going into it mentally, not knowing I was going to do as well as I could have. I'd gotten a bike crash about 2 months before that. And so my training was off. And I think at that point I was so goal-oriented with this race that knowing I wasn't going to perform the way I wanted to was mentally crushing.
Sure.
And that was tough. That was really tough, because rather than going out there and enjoying it, it was in Cozumel. What's not to enjoy about it? But going into it knowing that I wasn't going to enjoy it really meant I had to do a lot of soul searching in the 2 weeks leading up to it and say, okay, what do I really want to get out of this? And I think what was hard about it was realizing as the event was going on that I was performing to my current potential, but not the potential I thought I had 2 months before. And I think knowing that and being okay with that and pushing hard, but seeing that my numbers weren't where they should be, mentally coming to that realization that I'm crushing myself right now in this race and I'm not going to achieve my objective, that made it one of the hardest things I've ever done.
I bet. That leads me to the next question, which is literally perfect. What the hell are you thinking about? Like, this is one question I've always wanted to ask, the guys on the tour or the you guys doing the Ironmans like yourself. What's going through your head, man? Like, there's so much time by yourself. Where's your mindset? And obviously it goes through cycles, I'm sure. But
it does.
Yeah.
Usually what I'm thinking is, okay, I've got 20 minutes till I need to get my next piece of food in. Okay, here's a hill coming up.
Is that how you eat about 20 minutes?
Yeah, whatever it happens to be. It's like, okay, here's a hill coming up. Okay, I've got to, just kind of calm down my breathing. All right, and once I get to the top of this hill, I've got another 3 miles. I'm going to have another sip of water. It's all, you kind of shut yourself off from how far you have to go.
Sure.
And you think, okay, what am I going to need to get me through the next couple minutes?
Yeah.
What am I going to need to get me through the next 5 minutes? Okay, let me stop back and think for a second. How are my legs feeling? Are they feeling burned out? Okay, I just went up that hill. They're burning me a little too much. I might need to back off a little bit. It's all this constant thought process, this constant, going through checklists, running this whole maintenance process. And there are some times when you can just shut down. You got a nice long straight, or you're on this nice long trail run. And you're going through beautiful terrain and everything else. You can just shut down and think about a million other things. But but that's honestly the minimum amount of time. Most of the time, you're just thinking about the next step, the next 10 steps, and that's what gets you through, because that never gets old. Because you're trying to think of just, okay, what do I have to do next to kind of support the bigger goal here?
That might be part of the victory, man. Is like being present, because I know it's fucking hard to not think about how much longer I've got. Everyone who does cardio for a bodybuilding show, they're like, oh man, I still got 58 minutes left to go. How am I going to make it?
Exactly.
Or and then you'll know if you switch into something that kind of has you going through things cyclically. So, the way I'll do cardio, or the way I used to do cardio was, I would do it in spans of like 1 minute, I would do one step, and then 1 minute I would do double steps. Something as simple as that makes the cardio go by so much faster. Yeah. And then when I started adding in high intensity stuff, so I do 60 seconds of high, 3 minutes of low, it makes it go by so much faster, because then it's like, I don't have 60 minutes, I just have 8 intervals. And you're like, oh, that's not so bad. I can whatever.
Break it down and check. Yeah, because you definitely get to this point at some point in those long runs where you're going, okay, well, I've got 6 miles left, and each one is going by a 9-minute mile, so that's X number of minutes, and okay, percentage wise, I've done precisely 73% of the distance, and you go into that whole thing. But like you said, with the really long distance stuff, what really helps is just kind of constantly doing this internal checklist of what you're doing, and it's just the time drops away. It really does.
So that's cool, man, because that's my game, right? Is I love the idea of the paying attention to the minutia that's going to make it better. And so when I first fantasized about when I was a kid about doing the Tour de France, It was just about like, God, this is going to be like 10 hours a day or whatever it is, 15 hours a day of me just like zenning out and like going into my happy place inside my body. But it's not meditative. I mean, or you tell me, am I wrong? Is it meditative? Because my vision of it is like, I'm just going to go out there and like I'm going to zen out, be inside my brain and meditate and just kind of, mindlessly go through this time, but that's not possible.
Well, because I think the thing is, when I describe it, it sounds like a very active thought process, but it's really not. I mean, because there's so much when you're running or you're biking or anything else, and you're just kind of you're feeling your breathing and you're feeling your heart rate going and you're feeling your legs moving and everything else, and just making those little adjustments just to that overall physical sensation. If I say, okay, I'm going to try to get my breathing down. So you think, okay, I'm just going to be a little more efficient here. Okay, I'm going to take things back. I'm going to, kind of open up my chest a little bit. It may take you 30 seconds for your breathing to come down. And that whole time, all you're doing is focusing on, okay, let's relax. Let's let my mind calm down. Let's let my heart rate calm down. So it's all a very slow, gradual adjustment process. And you zen out a lot. It's the best thing to do is get your mind calm.
Do you have any strategies? So I'm a big believer in kind of, you have the ability to control, I guess, your internal physiological state. So when something starts to happen, let's say you just go up a really big hill and your lactic acid starts to accumulate, and some people are going to be like, oh, fuck, I'm in panic mode. Or if you start to feel something feels tight or like, almost like stress mitigation strategies is kind of what I'm asking is, what are your methods to, if my heart rate goes up, how do I make myself realize, okay, this is a good thing? Like I just did this hill and my heart rate's going up and then, or if I get this lactic acid accumulation, like how do you create positive associations in your brain with these internal cues you're receiving from your body? And is that something you even think about, or is it just you try to make them a non-factor?
Well, a big part, and that's why I say, don't let the race be the hardest thing you did, because in training, a big part of what you do is put yourself in these situations and learn how to get out of them. Yeah. After this hill, let's keep moving. Let's find ways to get your breathing down when you get to the top. Let's find ways to calm down. And suddenly those become a big source of satisfaction. Being able to get yourself off that ledge every single time and get yourself calm and get yourself relaxed again, that eventually becomes such an accomplishment in of itself. And it's great when you start to see the training pay off and you think, wow, I was just at red line. I kept moving. I went back and I focused on my cues and fundamentals and breathing and everything else. And look, I'm back to where I should be. That becomes such a source of accomplishment at that point that you almost look forward to those opportunities. Yeah. Because every time that happens, I know I can get myself back from that and I'm going to do it better this time. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, man, that's brilliant. So I see a lot of, when I'm meditating, when I'm doing yoga, like something I've started doing with meditation is trying to really extend out my inhalation, exhalation cycles. And, I'm up to, or I was up, maybe not now, but I was up to the point where I could do a 90-second inhalation. And people go, that's crazy. That's not possible. I said, well, it is. It's very slow. It's very methodical, but it's a 90-second inhalation. When I started, it was like 15 seconds. And all that's changed. Nothing has changed other than the fact that once I get to that 15 seconds, I'm able to relax there and realize, oh, I've been here before. I can go a little bit further.
Exactly.
So same idea with when you're riding the bike, right?
Exactly.
Like, you're like, oh, I'm comfortable here. That's meditation, right? It's like, oh, man, I'm good here. I'm not going into panic mode.
Yeah.
My internal response is nil. I can go just a little bit further. And that to me is the challenge, the greatest opportunity in life, man. It's like getting so far past what you thought you were capable of.
And that is one of the biggest things I think I've learned honestly from endurance sports as well, is realizing that you can always push yourself further, and not necessarily by suffering more, but by realizing that you can take the suffering component out of it, and you can work harder without suffering. And
talk about that, man. Like, so, because most people are attached to the suffering, right? Most people love to commiserate and talk about how much it sucked. Yeah. So how do we remove ourselves from the attachment to suffering?
I think part of it is realizing that discomfort doesn't have to mean suffering. And that is a huge part of it, because people talk jokingly about how, cyclists just love to suffer and all that. Some of them do. But I think the biggest part is realizing that the burning in your legs when you've been on a 2-hour climb, that's not necessarily suffering.
Sure.
It's a little bit of burning, but so what? That's just your body giving you some feedback.
Extra hydrogen in there.
Yeah, but it's just your body giving you a little bit of feedback that you're working your legs, and there's almost an exhilaration in that where you're just kind of like, okay, but you know what? I may have a little bit of burning going on here, but I can feel my heart pumping. I can feel the circulation going. My body is dealing with it.
Right.
That's not suffering. That's challenge, but it's not suffering.
Yeah.
And if all you want to do is crush yourself so you fall off your bike, you can do that, but that's not the enjoyment. The enjoyment is saying, okay, I'm actually achieving something right now that my body is capable of doing, and there is so much satisfaction and gratification to that.
Right.
That it's not suffering. It's the exact opposite.
And it's almost like an egotistical thing to just your ego's always trying to bail out of it, right? Your ego's trying to make it easier for you, or it's trying to make you not have to work. So your ego goes, well, I'm just going to fucking crush this, bury myself. And then I can
get off the bike.
Yeah, well, then I can boast about how hard I pushed myself.
Yeah.
When in reality, I just bailed out of the true process.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting, man. Yeah,
exactly.
That's such a true reality in everything we do. Is our ego's always trying to find ways to make shit easier or to give us something to boast about.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I mean, and that's what's so funny about endurance sports is everyone wants to be able to say, I had a crushing workout, but that's not the point.
Right.
Anybody can go crush themselves. You can go out and do a half-assed workout, and for the last 2 minutes of the workout, you can absolutely annihilate yourself. You feel like, man, I crushed it. I went out there.
I got a great workout.
I got a great workout, but that may not be the workout that's going to make you better in 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. And all you did by doing that half-assed workout where you crush yourself is satisfied your own internal need to crush yourself.
Sweet, man. So if someone's at home, sitting at home right now, and they want to start on this process. So my thing is like, all right, I can't afford you to coach me, Alex. I want to, I want someone to help me. Or if you have something online where I can kind of walk through this process of, is there a program that you have that like walks people through the
biggest thing that we'll tell people to do is get a gait analysis done if they're interested in running, because we do that, and that is the starting point. That's like saying, hey, I want to start squatting heavy. So what program should I follow? And you say, no, get somebody to look at your squat.
Okay, yeah.
Because what that's going to do is that's going to let you then go pick up any program you want.
Do you guys do like video remote coaching?
Yeah. We do remote gait analysis. We do it. There are a couple of other people that do it. It's like I said, it's literally like going in for a session with a great lifting coach or with a great bodybuilding coach, and they'll say, look, I'm going to work with you for 2 hours to just give you the fundamentals. Where you go from here is going to be better because you're going to have this chance to work on the fundamentals. Yeah. I tell a lot of people to start there.
So where do they find that? Is that at your website?
Yeah, they just go to the website and go under additional services. There's a gait analysis.
So do you do it like walk, jog, run, or how is that?
Yeah, we have most people just do it at a light jog because a lot of the findings from that are very translatable. You look at the body move, you look at the hips move, you look at the shoulders move.
Then running, which
elbow.
is exaggerated.
Yep. And because everything faster or slower is based off of that. And that is one of the best places to start because it tells us right away, okay, here's what you got going on now. Here's what you're going to have to work on to get to that last objective. And once we've cleaned up these issues, then you can just start putting miles and volume on and everything else. So that's where I tell a lot of people to start. And, because I think like anything else, a lot of people start by saying, well, what program should I get on? I'm going to get on a Couch to 5K program. And it's like saying, okay, I'm going to go do 5-3-1 and I don't know how to squat. You're not going to get better at squatting doing a program if you don't know how to squat.
Thank you for calling me on that, because that's the reality. If someone said, hey, man, what program should I start on to build muscle? I'd say, they're all shit. You need to learn how to do all these exercises first. Let's start with these. Yeah. Start with this basic 3-week program that teaches you how to do things first.
Yes.
Right? Yep. That would be way to assess, because ultimately everyone's going to have strengths and weaknesses, and it would absolutely be impossible to make a prescription on where to go.
Yeah.
So give yourself a shameless plug, man. Where do people find you? Tell me about your coaches. Tell me about your coaching program.
CompleteHumanPerformance.com. Our coaching program, our basic model is that we have coaches from ultramarathon, coaches from powerlifting, coaches from strongman. Some do military prep. Some come from a fighting background. Some from a physique background. We have them all come together. If you work with us, you either get one coach or multiple coaches, and it's all remote. And each one of them is, probably one of the best in their field. And we all kind of work together no matter what your goals or objectives are. We've got someone who kind of speaks that training language of anybody who comes in the door. And if they want to work on that, they work with that coach. If they want to try something new, then we get a coach who speaks their language, who can look at them, see where they're at, see what got them to that point and can work with a coach who specializes in their new objective to help them make that transition. That's kind of our biggest thing.
Yeah, that's super cool. And that's why Alex and I coordinated actually through our friend Chris Gethin, who obviously is a big meathead who did some cool endurance stuff. If you guys don't follow Chris, go ahead and follow Chris. Man, thanks so much. I don't want to take any more of your time. I think this has been fantastic. I'm sure we're going to do this again. So Alex and I will be working together over the next 6 months.
This will be fun.
Watching the progress of both of us transform, man. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks very much, man. Appreciate it.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that podcast. Thank you very much for listening. Head on over to iTunes right now and leave me a review. Let me know if you loved it. Let me know if you absolutely hated it. Either way, I need to know so I can improve my job and bring you guys the best information with respect to muscle building, health optimization, and building a better person, building a better man. So thank you very much to our sponsors, which make this stuff possible. I'd love for you guys to each head over and check out atplab.com, ATP Labs or ATP Lab, either one works. ATP is a company I've recently aligned with because they have world-class manufacturing, and everything they do is third-party tested and proven to be what it is inside the bottle that it says it is on the label. And you guys know that's massive. And not only that, we're getting the best quality ingredients from anywhere in the world that provides them. Thank you also to Prime Fitness USA, the best equipment for someone looking to build muscle and make the most of their time. I chose to reach out to Prime personally. They never reached out to me. I reached out to them because I knew what they had, and I really believed in their product, and I brought every one of their pieces into my gym, and we still use them every day because, we're all about mindful attention to detail. We are muscle intelligence. We are the ones teaching the best people in the world, the smartest people in the world, how to build muscle in the least amount of time. Another shout out to Gasp and Better Bodies for always taking great care of myself and my trainers and my staff. If you guys want to get a discount for Gasp Better Bodies, head over to benpakulski.com/podcasts and check out the show notes from this show and all of the other shows, and you can find transcripts there as well. So have a wonderful day, upgrade your life, stay focused, and live a life of greatness.
Join us on benpakulski.com to learn the cutting-edge techniques to take control of your body, your brain, and create your greatest life.